Chris, the Hall of Fame voters have decided that no Roger Clemens, no Barry Bonds into the Hall of Fame. I think the writers are hypocritical here. They knew a lot of these guys were doing steroids for years and said nothing. But I do think it's good for baseball in the sense that these guys cheated, they're paying a price, and ultimately the market prevailed. You feel differently?
I do. I disagree with you there. One, I don't think that you can necessarily call it cheating, especially because a lot of this steroid use happened before MLB implemented the new steroid rules and penalties in the mid-2000s. But moreover, I think that by punishing these guys for known steroid use, you have the issue of people who got away with using steroids and who may or may not end up in the Hall of Fame. And so it's sort of this questionable quagmire where you don't know who's guilty and who's innocent. So I think that the way to go about this is to sort of forget about steroid use.
Yeah, you know, Piazza, Biggio, they didn't get in. You know, Biggio over 3,000 hits, and you know, as far as I know, they were never implicated in any reports about steroids. Nothing ever came out that they ever tested positive on performance-enhancing drugs. Yet, you know, I was kind of surprised that they didn't do better, especially Biggio, you know. So maybe, you know, sort of that tainted kind of came down and got some of these guys as writers suspected that they were using steroids. You think that's possible?
Absolutely. I absolutely think so. That it's just they happen to be very good players at the wrong time. And maybe they did use steroids. Maybe they didn't.
Too big for their position, yeah. Especially Biggio.
Exactly.
Right?
You have a huge guy playing second base, you know, with all that power and speed, all in that one body. It's amazing, and it's easy to turn to steroids as the only possible explanation, especially when pretty much everyone else who was good at that time seems to have some link to steroid use. So I think that's sort of implicating these guys who have nothing on their records that should be keeping them out of the Baseball Hall of Fame.
Yeah, you know, you get a sense there's an overreaction here too. I mean, certainly in the case of Bonds and probably Clemens too. You know, even before they started taking steroids, and you know, you see their bodies change dramatically. They were Hall of Fame players. I mean, you know,
right.
Bonds, MVPs, Clemens, Cy Young. I mean, they were dominant for years before the steroids thing, and then now we're seeing it go to other players that people even suspect. This is after, you know, as I said. Certainly the writers knew for a long time that a lot of these guys, at least suspected, were on steroids. I think the big issue here has nothing to do with steroids, but some of the guys that didn't get in who I think were super. And, you know, I go to Jack Morris. I don't understand how this guy did not get in again. I mean, 4-time World Series winner, a dominant pitcher for several years, great in the postseason. I mean, a guy who just came out there day in and day out, did his job, pitched a ton of innings. Anybody on this list, you know, that didn't get in that you think has a good chance of getting in down the road?
I think Biggio will get in eventually. He had about 68% this year. He needs 75%. And generally it seems that over time, voters tend to start warming up to guys who've been towards the top of the list. So I think we'll see him. Jeff Bagwell's been close for a few years now, so he might be one down the line. And as we mentioned before, Mike Piazza, another guy who was up towards the front, but still needs a few voters to come around on him. So those may be the guys we'll be seeing in a few years.
I think down the road, Bonds gets in, and probably Clemens as well. But I think down the road, I think this was some of it was punishment not to have them be first-time inductees. I think down the road, those two will get in. Down the road, I don't think Sosa gets in.
I think you're right. I think Sosa's way off, and that he was more of a one-dimensional player, unlike a guy like Clemens who would dominate for years and years and years, unlike a guy like Bonds who hit home runs and stole bases and can play the field. That Sosa was a one-dimensional power hitter, and right now he's way off the ballot as it is. I think he only picked up a few votes, so I think you'd be right that he won't be seeing the Hall anytime soon, if ever.